But where are you really from?
A podcast about the Asian American struggle. Hey everyone, I'm Angela Lynn.
And I'm Jesse Lynn, and welcome back to But Where Are You Really From?
Today we are bearing our souls out to you for the sake of an episode. We're talking our current relationships. So last time we had a previous episode, I think it capped off season 1, where we talked about dating. But that's it's related, but it's like a whole different thing than being in a committed relationship and like the trials and tribulations that come with that. That was more about like, what's it like dating in and out of the race, and like what are some annoying things we hate hearing on dates and things like that, versus like who we are and what we've learned from being in our relationships thus far.
Mm-hmm.
So and Jesse and I are both off the market currently with committed long-term relationships. So we're going to talk about that in terms of shit we're bringing to the table, baggage, cultural related things, just all sorts of shit. So I hope you enjoy us telling you everything.
I will kick off relationships. First off, let's see how many like real serious relationships I have been in. I have been in 3 real serious relationships so far, and I count that meaning that like I dated the person more than like half a year.
If that's your barometer, I've been in 1, which is my current and last relationship.
Well, what would you qualify as a serious relationship?
No, I think that's fair. Well, it's not always time-based, I guess, in my mind.
Yeah.
I guess I would determine also based on like how deep I felt the connection was. But I do often refer to this as my only real serious relationship. So,
But I think that's interesting. I mean, it just goes to show like there's different strokes for different folks. Like everyone's definition of what a serious relationship means is different, and how people feel about like how many relationships you should have is different as well. Like I feel like I haven't had a lot of relationships, but I think if I talk to some other people, they'll be like, well, that's actually a lot for like how old you are right now. So yeah, there's definitely a huge gamut there.
hey guys, we wanted to talk about how much we've loved doing this podcast. It's given us an ability to share our stories with a whole new audience we never thought would even be interested in what we had to say. It's allowed us to connect with the broader Asian American community. It's something that's been really special for us and has only been possible because we have Anchor, which has allowed us to really easily create this podcast and distribute it to everywhere that people listen.
Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
You and I have talked about like relationships. I think you said it when we were talking about dating, but like you could fall in love with a million people. It's more like how much work you want to put into a relationship to make it work, right? And I feel like communication is like the critical skill that you need to master in a relationship, and compromise, which is like related though to how you're communicating your needs and stuff. And I feel like as an Asian person, that is something that our cultural upbringing also affected, because we're not a very like communicative about emotions type of people. And like, especially if you're growing up and you're trying to learn from your parents, like my parents never communicated properly when they were in an argument. Like it would just be yelling, and like there was no really resolve that ever came. It would just be like fuming and then like ignore each other, and then time passed and you just ignore that the fight happened and move on. And so there's not like a lot of healthy role modeling to look to when I'm in those situations. Like I've had to make a lot of mistakes in past relationships and in this current one with like, how do I properly communicate what I need? And when I'm hurt, like, how do I get across how I'm feeling and what I want out of it without just shutting off and assuming that things will be fine, even if we like keep blowing up.
Yeah, I think it is just a very distinctly different thing that our parents have versus what we have. And I agree with you 100% because this feels like a thing that goes hand in hand with the idea of being quiet, because I had very much the same experience. My parents would also get into fights, and then the fight would end, but I feel like nothing ever came from it. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if they ever had a discussion about it, but I remember very distinctly I've seen my parents upset before, but they were arguing about something related to my mom's parents, and my mom just started crying. Like, it was Sunday morning, I was sitting there like, what's happening now? And because I had never seen like
Mm-hmm.
that kind of like loss of control and like rawness and like emotion come out of them ever before. So it was just so shocking to see. So that's why I definitely agree with you there. I don't want to say it's emotional stunting, but there's just like a level of emotional understanding you don't get from our parents on how to form like romantic relationships. And the truth is that I kind of feel like if our parents accepted the idea of breaking up with people, they might have been broken up at some point. But I feel like
Right?
yeah, but they
Yeah.
don't they that doesn't exist for them, like Catholics, no divorce. So they're
Yes.
just like, we're ball and chain, like together forever. And that definitely has impacted me. Like, I have gotten into not arguments with John, but just like moments where I'm like upset. And then when I'm upset, I just kind of like I
Mm-hmm.
withdraw, like I don't say anything. And part of it's that where I'm just like, I don't know how, like, I don't know how to handle this emotion right now. And part of it's also just that I'm still struggling sometimes to like figure out what I'm feeling, A, and what I'm feeling that towards, B. So I'm not sure a lot of the times, and then I get very clammed up.
Yes, emotional comprehension is not at all something that our parents displayed or taught us. And I hear so much of me and what you just described as well, but not totally. I also, when I get upset, I like feel the emotion pretty deeply, and I know that I'm upset, but I much like you, I don't always understand the like core reason why I'm upset or like what triggered it, that it's probably tied to something else that happened in the past and it's like a recurring thing. Um, I don't clam up. I just explode. Like I am the opposite. And I get that from my dad. He has some anger management issues. I def took that from him. But that's definitely something that I've been working on in this current relationship because it's Ramon is more clam up type like you.
Mm,
So we're like opposite in that sense. And then he also has like done a lot of work on himself through this like multi-year leadership program that he's done that's essentially like group therapy. So he like
interesting.
knows a lot of where his trigger points are. So he's always trying to like get me to dissect why I'm feeling what I'm feeling, and it like makes me more angry. It just like spirals into a thing. But it's after I cool off, then it's like, okay, it is helpful to like be able to step back and say like, okay, it wasn't that you like left this dirty dish out. Like that's not what I'm actually angry about. It's like this other thing. It's like a recurring pattern, and then that annoys me because I had like, you know, a similar thing happen with roommates in the past or like with my parents and or something, right? It's like usually never just him or like the specific incident. And so that like processing and that reflection is something that I'm constantly still learning and not something at all that my parents do.
Well, let's talk about that, because I think that aside from the fact that they don't talk about relationships and feelings, I think one step farther than that is because they don't talk about feelings, we don't get a chance to learn the skills to do what we just discussed, right? Which is reflect on more than just the immediate feeling that you have and really understand where that's coming from. We don't get that at all because like the way that we see it according to the relationships that we saw growing up, it was like emotional reaction and then like nothing. You
Yeah.
just kind of like toss it. And that's really like not how you can do any relationships now. I feel like even if you had a relationship with a nice Asian boy as your parents wanted, I'm fairly certain that's not how a conversation would
I
go
hope
with.
not.
I don't think so.
I also feel like you need that kind of reflection to be able to pinpoint anything that is more recurring in your relationship and then try to like figure out a solve for resolving that more recurring underlying thing, because I definitely feel like what you said about like if our parents had the option to break up or whatever, like they probably would have.
Bye.
And a big part of that though is because they don't spend the time to like figure out what the real cause of their like constant conflicts are, because they don't talk about that. So like when I just like watch my parents fight, I'm like, this is the same fight you always have every single time. And like you don't talk about it though, or like figure out how to resolve it.
I also wanted to get your thoughts on what you feel like the idea of independence that your parents taught you had on your outlook for like relationships and seeking help from people. And I don't know if you had the same experience, but like when I was growing up, my parents, specifically my dad, like really impressed upon me quite heavily. He was like, "You're our only son. You have cousins, but they're not your siblings. So you shouldn't expect anyone to be there to help you except for us because we're your parents, but that's it." And so I feel like from a really young age, I had this feeling that it was like you have to kind of go it alone and you can only rely on yourself. And so I also kind of feel like for a long time, that's how I felt in relationships in a sense. I kind of felt like I had to like take charge and lead people places and like bring people to the direction that I wanted to. And I felt like that was really exhausting. And after I learned how tiring that was, I kind of was just like, kind of just gave up doing that. Also, dovetailed nicely with like something else that I was learning separately, which is that like everyone comes to their like happy place in their life at different moments and different times. And so I kind of learned those two things together and kind of like just took the, foot off the pedal. And I was like, well, we're dating. I would like to see you here, but you're going to take as much time as you need to get there. And I am not going to like influence that or try to be like the one that like pulls you there. So I definitely feel like that affected how I approached some of my relationships and like how I was trying to grow people in my relationships for better or worse.
This is definitely the first like adult relationship I've had where we're like both trying to like make ourselves better people and like help each other be better people. And so when you're in that kind of a mindset, you need to be able to be vulnerable and like accept and ask for help when you need it. And as someone who's always been like, no, I'm on my own, like who needs you, who needs anyone, that's very hard for me to do, is ask for help. So yeah, that part I totally relate to. The growing people piece, I've never done that. Like that's never really been part of me. I think because the types of people that I end up with, I already like one of my filters, I guess, is already that we're like more or less on par in terms of like aspirations in life and like career and whatever. So like I've never felt like there's been a big gap in that sense. So yeah, I haven't had that before.
But you've never wanted to, I mean, that doesn't necessarily pertain to just career, but also like other things in general. So, like, if they were like complaining about how they don't have friends, like bringing them to friend
Sure.
things and helping them hang out with friends, or if they're complaining about like, I don't know how to do this like chore thing, like helping them through that. Like, it's the
Yeah.
idea of like quote unquote fixing a person, but not necessarily like the like level of fixing that people are normally thinking about, where it's like, oh my god, you're broken. It's more just like small things to like help the person
Yeah.
grow in life.
Well, what I'm hearing from you is moments when you've tried to help someone grow, but they don't want to accept that help or that.
Precisely.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think we've all had that, and a big part of that is when you're not on the same page of
Hmm.
like that's usually a good sign that you're not on the same page with like
Yeah.
life and the relationship.
What do you think are some good things that our parents may have imparted us, or some culturally positive things that we learned that helped us navigate relationships in general?
I do think that like constantly striving for excellence thing is good in the sense that like I am always I have always looked for someone who's on par or better than I am at life, right? Like in career and like aspirations in life and like whatever, like anything else that makes them like an interesting person to me. But I I think that saved me. It's given me a shortcut for like my dating life versus like being open to just anyone because I know for myself that I wouldn't be satisfied with someone who is not as ambitious or as like wanting more from life than I am. So that's probably a piece that was, I guess, good.
I think that definitely seeing that my parents have been together for a while has shown me how important consistency and like staying together with a person is, because now we talked about the whole separation thing, but for better or worse, like my parents have been together forever, and although they may not necessarily talk about all their feelings and stuff, like you can still see that they put in some work to maintain the relationship. And as I told you before, like I don't believe necessarily that there is like the one. And I think that relationships is a choice, and you have to like make work to make it work. So I do feel like seeing that my parents have been together for so long despite everything has been like a proving point that putting work into relationships makes them work.
Yeah, I can
You're like,
see
no,
that.
bullshit.
No, I can see that. I can see that, but I also because we just talked about like
Yeah.
it's a taboo in Asian culture to break up. So like
Hmm.
part of that feels fake to me that like not your parents,
Mm.
like my parents, I'm talking about my parents, like to see that they've been together for that long, it's like would you have been you probably would have been like happier and like I don't know, more fulfilled in life if you had made certain decisions
Hmm.
earlier on in your relationship of like is this the right thing for both of us. um but with that said, I will say because my parents are also very different people and I constantly think to myself like how does this even work because they don't communicate well, right? But they do surprise me in that like especially with like big life decisions or like I'm consulting them for advice and stuff or whatever, like it's clear that they do talk about like very important things and like they share intimate secrets or whatever with each other and I'm like oh, okay, I guess there's like more to this than I'm seeing.
Hmm.
And yeah, especially well, to your point of like the work put in. So I do admire my parents and I'm not jealous at all that they did this. That like my mom essentially raised us almost like a single parent because
Hmm.
my dad was in China the entire time. Like he was running a business in China and he would come back only every like 4 months or so. And he would stay for like 1 or 2 months, but he was kind of like a revolving door dad. Like he didn't live with us most of the
Hmm.
time. And so to be able to maintain a relationship across the globe for like 18 years and still, feel that trust or, be solid enough to stay together during that time, that is extremely difficult. So I commend them for that. And I don't intend to do that with my life at all.
You know what's funny when you were talking about your parents is I also feel like my parents are very different people. Like, I feel like my mom is very gregarious. She likes to talk to people and she likes to hang out with people. And my dad's like, I'm just gonna sit at home and watch TV kind of dude. They're very, very different people. And I kind of feel like that I've never thought about it that way, but maybe that's why I'm kind of like when I date people, I don't it's not that I don't have a bar. There are like certain things where I'm like, I feel like you must have these things before I will like consider dating you. But I'm also generally more relaxed about who I'm dating. Not saying that I don't have standards or anything, but it's just that like I kind of see, yeah, they're like very different people. So I kind of see that there could be like value or like spark or like fun and joy to be found from like another person that is like extremely different from you or has like completely different life circumstances. And to be honest, most of the people I've dated have like
Yeah.
their backgrounds are like really different from mine. So
Yeah,
and I
same.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's fun to like it's fun to date people like that because then you have so much more to find out about another person because you like really dig deep into those foundations and be like, where'd you like all the stuff about their like background and where they're from.
I thought of something else that our cultural upbringing, or at least my parents, but I think it's a pretty Asian thing, like taught me is I feel like because Asian cultures don't place an emphasis on verbalizing love, like there's not a lot of I love yous that are thrown
Mm-hmm.
around, right, to
Mm-hmm.
show that you love someone. Every form of love is more as like um, a show of love through something else. So, like cooking your favorite thing, or like
Mm.
cutting some fruit for you, or like doing your laundry. Like, it's like acts of love,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Especially if like you get in a fight or whatever, like they'll never say they're sorry. They won't say I love you.
But here's some
But
watermelon.
yeah, yeah, or like something else nice was done
Yeah.
for you. I feel like there's good and bad to that, but like I've
Yeah.
definitely noticed that I do that as well. Like my primary way of showing love is through acts of love, not through like verbalizing. So we also wanted to discuss things that we wish we had learned. Maybe there are things we know now that like came from a lot of experience that we wish we knew earlier, or it's like things we saw in past partners or current partners that like we had that skill set prior. For me, I really do think it's this is not interesting at all, but I really do think it's the emotional processing and ability to communicate what you're feeling piece. Like I honestly feel like that's like 80% of a relationship. Or like the rest of it's easy. It's like conflict is where it's hard. And when you're trying to resolve conflict, being able to verbalize where it's coming from and like and what your needs are is pretty critical to maintaining a relationship, and I'm still not perfect at it.
Mm-hmm. Things that I wish I had learned. I feel like I'm just gonna approach it from like a talking to like a high school year old me because I feel like high school me would think like current me is like really cool, minus the whole like have to be stuck at home situation. I feel like the most important thing as it comes to relationship, this is gonna sound really cliche, but is to not take it so seriously. I feel like when I was growing up, I would watch all these like shows with relationships in them, and even like a lot of the Asian drama shows that our parents watch. Like everything is so dramatic. Like people are
Mm-hmm.
always like, it's life and death. Like she lost her memory, and this is like the only person that can help her get out. Stuff like that, where I feel like you have this very like normative concept where it's like you only have the one and it's always serious and that love is like so huge and big that it is like more important than anything else. And I feel like that's not true, and I think I would have had more fun like dating people and been more relaxed dating people if I wasn't trying to like find something so serious out of it.
I actually completely agree, and I've talked about this with my therapist before because and it's something I had to pick apart that it like even affected me, but like because we weren't allowed to date until we were older, like college essentially. And for me, at least, my parents told me explicitly whoever you date in college, we're going to assume you might marry this person. Like, there's always been this heavy weight assigned to relationships and sex, like all of it together, right? But like, so that gravity that's always been attached to relationships has had a huge impact on the way that I look at things, and like how free spirited I can be with just enjoying the moment, right? And like enjoying each other without having to label everything right away, or
Yeah.
like derive some sort of security from something that I am enjoying, but like need that sense of security to like feel okay because of these expectations that have been placed on what a relationship should be. So for sure, I agree. That's something I
Yeah.
also wish I could have unlearned.
All right. So, shall we go to our close, the fortune cookie?
Mm,
All right. Well, at the end of our conversation, I think we've talked a lot about the things that inform our relationship from our culture and our parents, both good and bad. We've also talked about, what we would have liked that probably would have changed how we dated and our outlook on dating so far. But we haven't really specifically quite talked about any of our partners yet. So we wanted to close with something nice about each of our partners and something that we are grateful to have learned from them. Angela?
yeah. For me, I have two things. Um, one is something I've always admired about Ramon, but I like didn't know how to apply that to my own life until this podcast, which is I think he's always had this like curiosity for in life, where like
Mm-hmm.
I've always hated school and I've like always never wanted to like learn beyond what I need to learn in life to like
Mm-hmm.
get certain credentials and like be qualified to do whatever. And I've always been like, it's learning's for that environment, and I'm gonna like use the rest of my time to like relax and like just have fun and forget it. But whereas like Ramon's always, he's constantly reading, he's constantly listening to podcasts, he's like constantly trying to just learn more about life and the topics he's interested in, and like grow more, and not say stagnant. And so that's been really inspirational for me to like not waste my time. So I think we talked about this before we even hit record, but like I try to stay very productive with my time now, because I recognize that like I still need downtime. I'm still watching Netflix or whatever when I need to like decompress, but every moment you have in your life could be used to like better yourself. And like especially with this podcast, it's like I this is something we're constantly learning new things about every episode we make, right? And it's like so rewarding to know what that feels like, and to like feel like I'm continuing to develop myself as a person. So that's one of like the bigger things I'm really grateful for. The other thing, which is like came about during quarantine but is like going to have a longer lasting effect on my life, is we talked about during Money Honey, but this idea of like not needing to do the typical like corporate America route.
Mm-hmm.
I so yeah, I've been dedicating a lot of time to like learning more about building passive income streams, and like how that could better free up my time and help me to pursue things that are going to like continue helping me learn and like grow in life. And that's not a mindset that I had before I met him, and he encouraged me to like read up more about
Mm-hmm.
this way of life. So very grateful for both those things. How
Oh,
about
that
you with
sounds
John?
awesome. Sounds awesome. I would say probably the thing first and foremost, and I already touched upon it, touched upon it a little bit earlier, is that he's really open to talking about like feelings when you're upset, and I feel like being with him has made me feel more open and valid about my feelings and also communicating them more freely and openly. And it's been really nice to not like have to sit on what I'm feeling all the time, and also not feel like I'll be judged in any way when I tell him.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's always been very fair and level-headed with the things that I throw his way, so I feel like I don't need to bottle as much when I'm upset about something with him. So that has been really really nice. And in the same vein, I also feel like he's a really easygoing person, and a lot of people really like him. I feel like that's why he has so many friends. And so and so I'm trying to like absorb some of that energy as well, because sometimes I'm like very high strung or like too worried about what people are thinking about of me in like social settings, and I like struggle to like be confident in how to
Mm-hmm.
like talk to people. So being around someone that is more confident already definitely helps me feel more confident about myself.
Nice. I
Yeah.
love that. So much positivity.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we spilled all our beans, so now it's your turn. If you have your own experiences that you wanted to weigh in on, or feedback on this episode, or anything else we've talked about, write us in at telluswhereyou'refrom@gmail.com, and maybe we'll feature your story on the episode.
And we'll have a new episode for you next week. So until next time, 再
再见,
见,
bitches.
bitches.